Hello and welcome into the Sporting JAX Report. Along with Mauricio Ruiz, I'm Cole Pepper. We're going to take a closer look at some of the big moves that have happened with young players coming into the USL Championship coming up. We'll also dive into what's happening as far as high school soccer in our area, but we'll start with an invitation to you to join Sporting JAX as a Sporting JAX member. Just go to sportingjax.com. You can get discounts on Sporting JAX official club merchandise when you sign up, an invitation to attend exclusive insider events. You're automatically entered into competitions for chances to win special prizes and experiences, and you'll receive the Sporting JAX monthly email newsletter. Plus, place a deposit on season tickets and receive first access to seats and a special limited edition Sporting JAX founding member pin. Just go to sportingjax.com and sign up. It's absolutely free. All right, we are getting closer and closer to the start of the USL Championship season. March the 9th, the year kicks off, Mauricio, and this past week, the good folks at the USL Tactics put out their predictions for the top teams in the East and the West. We want to kind of take a look at those teams, the top three in each conference, and get your thoughts on what you think is going to have playing out here in this season. And we'll start with the Eastern Conference. That's the conference that Sporting JAX will play in once we begin playing. And let's just look at the rundown here. Number 1, Louisville City. Number 2, Charleston Battery. Number 3, Tampa Bay Rowdies. For starters, do you like this top three heading into the season? Are these the right three teams to be considering as the top Eastern Conference teams?
I think that was an easy one from a historical standpoint. There's a lot of movement with all three teams, and you look at Louisville's. They lost quite a bit of their star players and some of the veteran players. Lancaster's been in the roster for a long time, and Louisville's changed a little bit. They went to a more possession style under Coach Denny Cruz. So last year being a little bit more direct. They've added some players into the squad, but they haven't added too much more outside of depth. So now they've also been in the conference final almost every single year. We kind of talk, even when they have a bit of a subpar year. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Tampa Bay. New coach. They've retained quite a bit of their players. J.J. Williams is gone, but they get Leo Fernandez back. And we forget that, they struggled a little bit in the final third at times last year, but Leo Fernandez, league MVP only 2 years ago, coming back from an ACL. So yes, I think it's an easy and safe bet. The group that maybe no one expected last year to be where they were is the Charleston Battery. They came in, had a new coach, completely revitalized their roster, and Ben Perlman did what he did at Memphis, came back to Charleston. I actually would think that even though they lost quite a bit of players, that 3 players go to the MLS. Barajas nearly led the league in assists last year as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old throughout the season. Went to Real Salt Lake. They lose him. They lose some firepower, but they're adding a lot of depth to that squad. It is a long league, 34 games. I actually see Battery potentially. I would have given them the nod as the number 1 in the East.
All right, and repeating what they did last year,
absolutely,
going all the way to the USL Championship Finals. All right, out west. Some familiar names at the top there. Sacramento Republic picked as the number 1 team in the West, with Phoenix Rising, the defending champs. And then Tulsa FC, maybe a bit of a surprise pick here to be all the way up to number 3.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when you talk about, they weren't great last year. They barely kind of, struggled. They were getting better throughout the end of the year last year. Coach Blair Gavin was his first year as a head coach. And then once the roster is nearly set, he leaves as an assistant for the MLS. And then, he left the reins back to one of his former guys there that's still there. But, Mario Sanchez comes in, was at Louisville, but it's not a team that really looks like, Philip Goodrum could be an MVP on a team that's contending for a championship. I'm not really sure that also it should be up there, especially when you look at Sacramento. Phoenix Rising made the run to the championship. Sac Republic to me probably was the most steady in the offseason. Nothing overly sexy and attractive. They did bring in a Golden Boot winner from League One in Northern Colorado to kind of to boost their attacking power, which was already pretty good last year. They just look like they know who they are and they know what they're doing. 75% of their minutes return, which is kind of odd in the USL Championship. Typically, that's around the 50 to 60. So they return the most amount of players. They return goalkeeper of the year, add more attacking firepower. So Sac Republic for sure, the number 1. Tulsa, I think they're getting some good fortune, some good faith from folks right now.
All right, we'll see how it all plays out again as the season gets set to kick off on March the 9th. There are 2 teams playing in USL Championship this year that have not did not last year. One of them has previously, the other new club, and that of course is Rhode Island FC, the expansion club, and then North Carolina FC, who had competed previously, dropped down to League One, and now has come back. What do you expect from these new teams, new clubs into the championship?
So I have one name for both, I guess. Contender for Rhode Island, and off of what they've done in the offseason, who they've brought in. Aberdikwa, JJ, I mean, just from that attacking young players still. But you have your leading goal scorer, your Golden Boot winner from the league is now joining them. And from what I hear, they're having a really good preseason as well. So I think Rhode Island's a contender. NCFC, this is not their first time, right? So I think they're slow and steady. I think they're going to slowly kind of get caught up. They made some signings, but nothing, nothing significant. They actually moved a lot of their League One roster, just moved up to Championship. So they're comfortable with what they have, and you see that quite often in promotion relegation. Some teams just move up. Kind of if you look at kind of what we follow, like Luton Town didn't add a lot when they moved from Championship to the Premier. Barkley, they'll add one or two kind of key players, but otherwise slow and steady. We've moved up. We're gonna we know who we are. They can make some signings as they go. But I think they're going to come in and they're going to compete right away, especially in NCFC. They've done this before.
Yeah, they've been there. All right, we'll see how that plays out with those two new clubs in the championship. Now let's talk about a couple of new players in the championship. And these are two young players who have signed here in the past week in one way or another. That is the Rowdies acquiring Damian Rivera on loan from New England Revolution, 21-year-old Rhode Island native. Scored over the weekend against CF Montreal during a preseason matchup. 17 goals, 5 assists in 55 appearances for Revolution 2. So here is a young player, 21 years old, moving from MLS Next Pro, moving up to USL Championship.
Yeah, I think that just speaks about, we talked about it on the pod last week as far as like kind of where the two leagues stand, the USL League as a whole with the Championship in League One and then MLS Next Pro. I think, a statement like this and a player in this kind of move that the Revs, a player that has made a few appearances with their first team, but largely with their second team, it feels more comfortable, even though they have a second team, still a young player, they have a second team. They feel like for his maturation, it's better for him to go to USL Championship to get first team senior level minutes, and then see kind of how he matures, with that transition. That just speaks of players. If you have academy players that are promising and developing, the MLS Next Pro is a great environment for them, and I think it's going to benefit a lot of players' growth. Once they've already almost outdone the MLS Next Pro environment, they've kind of overreached, but they're still now ready to compete with the first MLS team. Where do they go from there? And I think USL Championship fits in a really good senior level football for them.
All right, is that the same situation as El Paso Locomotive adding Brendan Craig on loan from Philadelphia Union? This is an academy player from the Philadelphia area. Was on loan to Austin FC, didn't get a chance to play there. Just 19 years old. He's played center back and with U.S. Youth teams, U20, played every game for the U.S. at the FIFA U20 World Cup in Argentina. So this is a young man who's getting most of his playing time right now playing in international competition.
Yeah, and I think it is, especially for center backs, it's a position of maturity, responsibility, and trust. So to come in, into the Union, which is one of the better kind of, academies and first teams, if he's not ready to be competing and playing first minute games with a top team, but he's a high prospect, then you got to get him playing. You got to get him playing time. And if at 19, he's already kind of above that MLS Next once again profile player, and he's going to be playing out with young as a 19-year-old in MLS Next Pro at the Union. You're the oldest. I mean, you're singularly one of the oldest players in there. So that's not competition, and if he's not going to be playing first team minutes with the Union, then you have to find him an environment where he can actually compete. So once again, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a shoo-in. He still has to compete. Locomotive, a good team. They kind of had some really good ups and downs last year, but we know how they play. It's a way to get this promising, international pros, as you're looking at Craig, opportunity to get first team minutes to then potentially make the jump back into their first team, or eventually internationally. All
right, we will talk more about the season approaching, both here on the Sporting JAX Report and also on the Sporting Pod. You can find the Sporting Pod anywhere you find your finer podcasts. Mauricio, Tony Allegretti, and I talk about some of the big topics going on around Sporting JAX, around soccer in America and the world. It's the Sporting Pod anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. All right, a quick note on the high school soccer action in our area as well, Mauricio. Some of the larger classification teams moving on to the regional semifinals include Mandarin, Creekside, Nice, and Inglewood on the boys' side, and you've got Bartram Trail, Creekside, Ponte Vedra, Nice, Beachside, and Clay on the girls' side. Again, very strong representation. We talked about the smaller classifications last week. Really good, strong representation from our area in the high school soccer scene this year.
Yeah, and I'm actually really impressed with on the boys' side. I think we knew the girls' side, just because of the numbers, we had so many high-performing teams from the beginning to the end of the year. But on the boys' side, Mandarin and Creekside were always up there. They're staying strong. But Inglewood and Nice, they were kind of like in that bubble, and you'll see if they're going to push through or if they're going to kind of fall through. And we saw Nice, Coach Fred, Halle did a great job. We were able to kind of go into his environment a little bit to listen to one of his players' stories. So for them to kind of continue to carry on, maybe make it even further, I think Final Four is a goal for a lot of these teams. So I know they're only 2 games away from that.
It's big stuff right now in the high school soccer scene for sure. All right, we'll have more coming up next week on the Sporting Jacks Report, and be sure to tune in to the Sporting Pod. Subscribe there, subscribe here, and become a member of Sporting Jacks by going to sportingjacks.com. For Mauricio Ruiz, I'm Cole Pepper. Thanks for watching the Sporting Jacks Report. Talk to you next time.